Hello, everyone. Uh, Today we're going to be talking about uh, doing MUDA analysis in ProPlanner and how some of our customers are using this information for um, analyzing non-value added data in their processes. That'd be the focus of today's discussion. So before I begin, just to kind of set things up here, uh, I will jump to what the core ProPlanner software does. As those of you are aware of ProPlanner, our assembly planner tool basically sits in between product design and engineering, and sorry, MRP. So between PDM and MRP, ERP, and the core function of ProPlanner is to define the process, as we call the bill of process, that matches the bill of material, so that we know based on the products that have been put together, what processes are required or involved in creating that product. So we are consuming parts from the bill of material, creating work instructions, we're creating, we're mapping model options and so on. But a key part of that process definition is time studies and eventually line balancing. And as a part of time studies, we try to identify the waste or the non-value added content of the work that is being performed by the operator. And that is very valuable to a customer. That is a work that you are really not getting paid for. That is work that you can eliminate from your overall process and reduce and basically cut out the waste, and saving and create some savings. So that's what we'll focus on in our discussion today. So just as a background, we have the three main tools. We have Assembly Planner, Shop Floor Viewer, and we have Fact Board. Shop Floor Viewer and Fact Board are more on the execution side, to view work instructions on the shop floor, to collect data, to report that data out on Fact Board and dashboard-like systems. But the key planning backbone of both Shop Floor Viewer and Fact Board is Assembly Planner. Right? Assembly Planner is where the manufacturing engineer is going in, the logistics engineers are going in and defining the key processes. So again, to recap, assembly plan is where you're going in and defining the process plan and the detailed work instructions. You're doing time studies, and as you're doing time studies, you're looking at the operator, or you're observing the operator's movements, and you're categorizing them into value add and non-value add. So with that in mind, I'll start with why this came to be in ProPlanner, the whole concept of MUDA or non-value added analysis, why you want to do this in ProPlanner, what are some of the reporting tools we have, what is MUDA, and why it's a critical piece of world-class manufacturing or WCM, and then finally we'll get into the application. So let's start with what is MUDA, right? So MUDA is a Japanese concept. It came as a part of the Toyota production systems, where they try to figure out what are the movements of not only of the assembly area, but overall in the plant, that can be eliminated to reduce waste, to reduce non-value added content. So you can look this up, but these are the movements, these are the functions in a manufacturing setup that are considered as non-value add, and we are going to focus on these three main ones. So motion, why is my operator walking around the work area or the assembly line? Why can't we provide everything that the operator needs to the operator, rather than having them walk around and pick parts and pick tools, etc. So how to eliminate or reduce the movement of the operator. Waiting, how do we eliminate waiting? Why is my operator, how can I sequence my tasks, or how can I sequence my units so that my operator doesn't have to wait on the next unit or the next task because of and just have to, that is wasted time, right? So how to eliminate waiting on the operator. And then finally, how do we how do we empower the operator to do a good job checking their work, inspecting their work, so that they are not having, so we remove the rework aspect of the assembly operation. So just, some of those concepts and how it applies to time studies is what we'll look at next. So what we did in ProPlanner was we created, since we are dealing with the assembly line and we are dealing with the assembly processes, or in general a process, be it assembly or machine cell, wherever, we analyze the operator's activities or tasks in that process, in that area or in that station, and then we see, okay, what is in this in what the operator is doing, how can I go in and take out the non-value add. So to do that, we are basically allowing you to define your categories, so to speak. So in ProPlanner, we have three main MUDA categories, three main waste categories: value add, semi-value add, and non-value add. Okay. For each of these classes, as we call it, you can go in and define your categories. For example, if you look at non-value add here, there is waiting and walking and searching. You know, all of these seem like tasks that we can, or movements that we can eliminate if we do a better job, either sequencing our process or redesigning our work area so that the operator doesn't have to wait and walk, etc. And then within each category, you can go in and further define the subcategories or the details. Like, am I walking to get a part? Am I walking to get a tool? Am I walking to go through waste after I'm done working in my area? So, all of these movements that the operator is making while we observe the operator are considered non-value, and we can mark them while observing the operator. But the advantage here is, if you have 5 other categories of walking, or if you have 5 other classes or 5 other categories of waste, you get to define that in the system, right? You're allowed to define that in the system. You're allowed to set a color on it. And this is important because we may not have covered, out of the box categories that we provide may not cover all the types of waste that you see in your facility. So you are allowed to define your own categories and your own details that go with the category. So how does this tie up to time studies? So for example, if I am watching the operator work, I'm either watching a video or I'm just watching the operator on the floor perform their work, and I'm saying, okay, these are the movements that the operator is doing. He's holding an object. He's walking up to the bench. He's assembling it, so on and so forth. As I watch all those movements of the operator, I then get to choose the MUDA categories that I think apply to that particular to those particular elements, right? So I can get into each one of these movements, and I can say, okay, I see of the 2.5 seconds of time that the operator is spending doing their work, 0.5 seconds is 2 seconds is non-value add and 0.5 seconds is value add. So we can go into each of these detailed elements of the operator and then further break it down into value add, non-value add, and semi-value add. While right from when you're doing the time series, you can do it right there and then. And then what the tool will then do is collect all this information of value add, semi-value add, and non-value add, and report it back to you at a station level, at a operator level, at a unit level or a model level, and so on, so that you can then overall see in a given month of all the production that I'm doing, then how much of waste is there in that month, or how much of waste is there across the different months, so you can see how you can make improvements, right? So since the MUDA data is tied to the activity, which is our lowest building block in terms of a process, as you assign these activities to stations and operators, and as we do analysis by month, by unit on the line, you can get an idea of how much waste there is in the overall for a given unit, for a given set of units, or for a given month, and so on. And I'll jump into that a little bit. But the key here is that we are trying to calculate what is your non-value add content, what is your semi-value added content, what is your value added content. And then we also have a new category called unclassified. For example, you may have 2.5 seconds of time given to an element or given to an activity, and you may only do 2 seconds of MUDA analysis on it, right? while doing the analysis, you only feel that 2 seconds of this entire activity has any kind of categorization. So all that half a second that's left out in the analysis, we are bucketing that or putting that into an unclassified time, so that later you can go in and see why that why you can see clearly that there is portion in my station or my operator. There's a portion of time that hasn't been categorized into any kind of MUDA. So we are covering the basics of MUDA, and we are also covering the portion of the time that hasn't been categorized into MUDA. And you can do this on any of the 3 time standards. You can just guess your time and say, okay, 2.5 seconds. I think 2 minutes is value add and half a second is non-value add. You can do it on calculator or predetermined systems like MOST and MTM or mode apps, or you can just watch a video, and while watching the video, you can click through and categorize your time. So all 3 are allowed in terms of analyzing the non-value add content. How do we report this? As I said, I'll get into this a little more deeper here, but essentially, once you have all your activities and their time studies completed with the MUDA analysis done, you can then go look at it at a station level or at an operator level, however you want to look at it. And then for the horizon that you're planning for, in this case, this line balancing is for maybe a month of orders. It'll say, okay, for that horizon, for the activities that have been selected at each station for that planning horizon, there is about 50% or 48% of non-value added content at this station, 240, 30% of value add, 13 of semi, and then 7% of the time has not been accounted for in terms of MUDA analysis. So there are 2 colors here. There's a light gray and there's a darker gray. The difference between those 2 is the light gray is unclassified time, so basically time that hasn't been accounted for in terms of MUDA, and the dark gray is idle time, which is again a kind of waste that you want to analyze, right? So what that means is at this station, compared to the first station, in the first station, there is no idle time for the operator. The operator is always busy. But as you go across station 250 or 270, there is idle time for the operator, right? Which again is the waiting that I was talking about earlier. So there is, on an average, the operator is waiting 6 minutes at that station because of either scheduling or whatever be the case, right? You're not pushing, you're not maximizing the operator's efficiency or tasks at that station. So that's another aspect of the MUDA analysis, is not only the semi-value add, value add, and non-value add, but it's also the idle time that you want to analyze and see how you can eliminate that by reassigning works, by rescheduling your units, so that that waste is also eliminated from the system. And so before I get into the application, one last thing that I want to talk about. So we have customers that use this concept of world-class manufacturing at WCM. It's not a lot of people do it. It's basically a means of continuously improving your production performance, to go in and see where you can eliminate non-value add content. What is one of the things in WCM, and the pillar, it has 10 pillars, and one of the pillars that we are focusing on with this MUDA analysis that we do in ProPlanner is the cost deployment pillar. The idea behind cost deployment is to break this process into smaller pieces, which is exactly what we're doing with taking an activity and defining time study elements for it. So we are breaking it into smaller pieces, and then we are looking at those smaller pieces to see how we can identify the losses of the non-value add and eliminate those, right? So that's really the idea behind expanding this tool, the MUDA analysis tool, to WCM, and specifically in the cost deployment pillar. So what is it that we do here? I'll show you that a little later. But for cost deployment, you're trying to compute the cost associated, or the non-value added cost associated to each unit on the line, and just reporting that out to MRP, because that's a loss in terms of what as far as MRP is concerned, right? All of those wasted movements of the operator could have been avoided if we redid our work center, if we redid our sequencing of the unit or scheduling of the units, or redefined our processes, right? All of those non-value added movements of the operator can be avoided if we reorganize our workplace and eliminate that loss. So that's the tie back into WCM is focusing on the cost deployment pillar and how we can redefine our work to reduce the losses. All right, with that being the case, I will get into the application next. Okay, so as you know, as many of you may be aware, I'll try to quickly go through this. When it comes to defining a process in ProPlanner, so let me start by saying the application that I have up here is called Assembly Planner. This was, as I was explaining on the slides, this is a core process planning solution. This is where we do our time studies. This is where we do our MUDA analysis, and this is where we do our line balancing and so on. So in Assembly Planner, we have three core process planning stages. We have the routing, operation, and activity. The routing is typically a line. I just created a line called MUDA analysis, but it'll be your main line, your engine line, your cab line, your sublines, and so on. That line has a set of stations. In this case, you can see I have about 5 stations defined here. And in each station, you have a set of activities. So if I go into the search tank station, these are all the activities that I'm performing at that station, right? Each activity has an operator map to it, has a time associated to it, and then I'll get into these detail of the time next. But the idea is that you're going in and defining your activities by station and then doing further analysis of those activities. So if I open one of the activities, you can see that it has, there are 3 types of time associated to the activity. I have calculated time. Let's open something. So you can see all my activities are here for that station. As I click through this, you can see that I have multiple types of time studies that I can do. I can do a calculate time study, which is based on one of these time standards. ProPlanner supports NTM, MOST, or MODAPs. But again, what I'm trying to do here is as I load a time standard like MOST and I click through some of these elements, you can see that it's putting my my operator movements down here as I watch or as I observe the operator. And as I do that, what I can then do is I can say, okay, the operator walked this to the unit, right? Let's get a proper walk here. Okay, the operator walked, let's say, 16 to 20 steps. Okay, fine. The operator walks 16 to 20, but why did they really walk those many steps? So I can come in here, I can double click on my VA, and I can say, okay, of the 310 TMUs, in this case we're doing it in TMUs, which is a lower time standard than seconds. But I can say that 310 TMUs, 150 is walking to parts, and then 160 is to these waste containers, right? So I can do something like that, right? And as I do that, that particular step that the operator performed, I have categorized it into a MUDA category, right? So now when I look at this in the overall scheme of things at the station, that activity will contribute to the walk MUDA category. And then I can further see that the operator is truly walking to the bin or to get parts or to get to waste. And I can go and target that and say, how can I bring the parts closer? How can I eliminate the waste? Maybe that's not an operator thing to do. Someone else can take care of the waste that's generated by at the station, right? So that's the kind of analysis that you can do once you get into this lower level of detail. So you're going activity by activity, and for each activity, you're defining these steps or time study elements, and for each time study element, you're going in and you're doing a MUDA analysis or a detailed analysis. As far as what that MUDA is, in our system, we have a concept of MUDA classifications. So you can see that folks created their own here, but the point that I'm trying to raise is you can create your own categories of non-value add, value add, and semi-value add. And basically that category can then be given a specific color, and that category can be used in your analysis, right? So you may have situations in your facility that we are not capturing with our standard these 8 or 7 default categories that we ship in out of the box. You can add your own categories, you can add your own details, and you can set them up as you want, right? So that's an important factor because that lets you do MUDA based on the way that your factory is operating. Okay, so that's basically defining the MUDA, right? So going into an activity, going into the details of the activity and categorizing the waste that comes out of it. How do I analyze this? If I were to go to line balancing, for example, I had I pulled up that same routing that you were seeing earlier in line balancing and I give it a takt time of say, and then what I'm now doing is I'm going station by station and analyzing the total non-value added content at each station, as I was explaining earlier. So this is a good way of you to look at your line and say, okay, this is all loss, right? I mean, this is all bad some of this can be or should be eliminated. And that's really the kind of discussion that you're trying to trigger by looking at this graph is, how do I eliminate the red and how do I eliminate the dark gray at the top? And how do I eliminate the non-value added content and the idle time that the operator is spending at each station? Once you have all of this reviewed, you can report this. Like in ProPlanner, we have some key reports that you can use to generate this information. And what is important to note here is I can do this MUDA reporting by serial numbers. So I can select a range of units. I mean, I can go in here and say, I want to select units from, 1st of September through, that's a 21 years, you probably don't want that, but I want to select a range of units from 16th of February through the 28th of February. So that's what I'm trying to see if I'm doing some, I'm eliminating the waste by the improvements that I made. So you can select a range of orders. It's going to go fetch the activities from the database for those orders, and then do a MUDA analysis or non-value add analysis on those applicable activities, right? So as you go from month to month, or quarter to quarter, you're trying to see if your waste is going down. You can do that by selecting orders. That's really in my mind, that's the most optimal way of finding out if you're making improvements or not. So you can do that, or you can just select a model that you're trying to do analysis on. And some of the key reports are, for example, balance time classification report, right? So let's generate this here. So what this is doing, I selected the wrong station. One second, select this, the first station where I did all my analysis. Okay, so what this is doing is it's saying for your given takt time of 30 minutes, for operator 1 at station 1, these are all the non-value added categories that are out there. Now, some don't apply, but the ones that do apply, you're seeing the actual time being spent by the operator to perform that work, right? And then same thing with the semi-value add and the value add, right? So basically, at the end of the day, it's going to, and there is another operator at that station. So if I go down to all the way to the bottom, you get a summary by operator of non-value add, semi-value add, and value add, right? So what you were seeing in the graph at the back is more of a average content. So you can see that it was more about 50% of work is this and that, and what you're seeing here is more of a detail, right, tied to that particular the particular operator, right? You're looking at of all the things that the operator is doing, how much time, the actual time are they spending on packing and unpacking, how much time are they spending on body movements, right, on walking and so on and so forth. So you get a more detailed analysis of what the operator is doing. This itself is something that we export out also as a part of our cost deployment exports that I was talking about earlier. And what that is essentially, I'll share that with you right here. I'll quickly show you an export of what that looks like. This is for one of our customers here. Where did I write that? Okay, so basically you can see that what we are generating here is to say, okay, let's go for that particular unit, right? So this is all tied to that unit, BSPXL. What we are reporting is, okay, all the direct labor activities that are involved, these are all the losses that you see. So 1.6, 0.16, 0.08, 0.41, and these are the categories of those losses that we are seeing. And it's in between that particular time horizon that you planned for, it's at that particular station, and basically that's what we're reporting out. We're saying that that's the loss that you can see in the system as you for every unit that you're putting together in that particular planning horizon. So basically taking this report that you were seeing and applying it on a unit by unit basis and grouping the times together so that we can report out the losses. Another report that you can see here. All right. Another report that you can see is you can now print this out in terms of activities that the operator is doing, and you can combine this along with your MUDA report to get details of why the losses are there at the station, right? So, and then you have the utilization report as well. So if I say show the task details, yes. So we have the utilization report. So if you want to compare this and see on a station by station basis, what portion of your time is value add, non-value add, semi-value add, idle, you can get that out, and you can look at the details of and the breakdown of in terms of percentage of which activities are contributing the most to the non-value add content. So that's essentially all the non-value added analysis that you can perform in the system. As I said, I think the key is for us to be able to generate exports such as this, which are looking at a unit by unit level, a unit by unit of your production schedule, and reporting out the non-value added content of each of those units, right? And this is all time that is a loss. This is all time that can be eliminated by improving your workplace. And then if you want to look at details of all of that, we have the data to back that up. So you can go back and see, okay, this guy has a pretty high non-value added content right here, 50%, right? What am I doing in this insert fitting into radiator combo? What can I do to eliminate that non-value added content? And how can I improve the operator's movement so that goes down to almost to zero? So that's the idea behind the MUDA analysis in our system. To recap, you're doing time studies. While doing time studies, you're doing non-value added analysis of everything the operator is doing. You're then projecting that non-value added content across the line, across the stations on your line. You're seeing which stations have the highest non-value added content. You're targeting those stations. You're looking at the details of those stations in terms of which activities on those stations have the highest non-value added content. You can then go refine those activities, improve them, reduce the non-value added content. From a reporting standpoint, what the system then allows you to do is to generate, as we say, a cost deployment or MUDA analysis at a unit by unit level, unit by unit basis for a given month, for a given quarter, for a given planning horizon. And then you can see what the total non-value added content is for that horizon. And then as you go across your quarters, you're trying to eliminate or reduce that non-value added content and overall cut your losses. So that's the idea behind the application and the MUDA analysis in here. I'm going to stop sharing. So if you have any questions, comments, please send those across to us through our website, and we'd be more than happy to get back to you. Thank you.